Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Caribbean Studies here at the Student Hub. And last week we had started looking at Caribbean arts and popular culture in the region and its diaspora, right? So how we would have formulated and developed our own indigenous arts and our own popular culture within our Caribbean and then also within our diaspora. What is Caribbean art, right? And we had brainstormed many different definitions. We had looked at what essentially would entail Caribbean art forms, right? So now we're going to look at exactly what are Caribbean art forms according to our syllabus. So according to our syllabus, Caribbean art forms will include music, dance, culinary practices, and festivals. And these festivals will be secular and non-secular, meaning religious and non-religious festivals, right? We're going to look now at music. In terms of music, we have to look at reggae, calypso, steel band, punta, rock, and drumming. So reggae would have originated within Jamaica. Calypso and the steel band would have originated right here in Trinidad. Punta Rock would have originated in the more Spanish-speaking territories, and drumming, it would have originated throughout the Caribbean region, where we would have seen a heavy predominance of African enslaved persons. So we were really looking at places like Jamaica, some of the more larger territories, Haiti, where we would see the African enslaved individuals would have used drumming as a way of sending messages, right? So we're going to look at music. So the music of the Caribbean now has helped to define the region, right? It has given us a sense of identity as to what the region exactly is, meaning Caribbean people themselves, right? As well as it would have given the world a way of locating the region, right? So it gave us Caribbean people our local identity. It helped to formulate our sense of patriotism, a sense of regionalism, and internationally as well. It would have placed us on a global map. Okay, most of the music of the region has been traced back to our migratory history, meaning when different waves of migrants came into the Caribbean, be it forced or voluntary, they would have also brought with them their musical practices, and that has influenced the region. So, for an example, when the Europeans came in, they would have brought with them their own form of music. When the African enslaved persons were forced to come into the Caribbean, they would have brought with them their own forms of music. And then when the East Indians came into the Caribbean as well, they brought with them their own forms of music. Their music would have is still alive because they were not forced in such a violent manner to give up their culture as compared to the African enslaved persons, right? During African enslavement, the African enslaved persons they were really forced in a violent manner to forget about their history, forget about their culture, forget about their practices, right? Because of the fact that slavery was seen as an entire institution, right? And the Europeans wanted to eradicate any connection that the African enslaved persons had with their motherland. When we look at the East Indians now, yes, the practice of their religion and of their culture was frowned upon, but it was not so much forced upon them as we saw happening with the African enslaved persons. So we see that elements of each group would and their music still exists within the Caribbean today. So different peoples would have imported their traditional forms and would have gone through a process known as syncretization, right? Meaning it would have fused with the music that was already existing within the Caribbean and now form the music that we know of as today. We would see it evolve over time as well. It helps us to understand who we are because we understand as well where we would have come from, our ancestors, and the struggles that they would have gone through. Because in various musical forms, be it reggae, be it calypso, right, be it rap, so be it other musical forms at the grassroots level, we see that music was the means of expressing our griefs with society, a means of expressing who we are, right, and help to formulate our identity, right? So this identity could be whether they reside at home, meaning here within the Caribbean region or as part of the diaspora, because you, even if you are part of the Caribbean diaspora, you are out of the Caribbean region physically, but yet you still feel a sense of being part of the Caribbean region. Okay, let's look at the first one, reggae. Right, though this is the most internationally famous style of Caribbean music, it would have originated within Jamaica in the 1960s and what is known as the cockpit country within the mountainous regions. We would see that this group of people was really and truly facing a lot of hardships, facing a lot of difficulties, a lot of prejudice still from the colonial authorities, and even when Jamaica became independent, they still faced a lot of prejudices as well. So reggae was a way of them singing about their their grievances, right? And also singing about what was happening within the country. Now, reggae today is identified as the music of Jamaica as well as its diaspora. So Jamaicans just throughout the world would recognize that this is their music, right? And they would, have a sense of identity, have a sense of belonging attached to this particular type of music. So it would have gained a lot of international prominence, right, because of its rhythms and performers. Now let's look at calypso. Now, calypso had its origins within West African music and singing. Remember, a lot of the African enslaved persons came from West Africa. So when they came to the colonies, they would have tried to hold on as much as possible to their culture. Now, it was seen as resistance by the lower socioeconomic classes to the colonial powers. So just like how reggae was singing about some of the atrocities that was going on within the world, we see that calypso as well is doing the same thing. How do the lower socioeconomic classes respond to the atrocities that are being committed against them by the colonial powers? It poked fun and important people and institutions within society. So things such as the Roman Catholic Church, politicians, the entire institution of colonialism at that point in time. And then when Trinidad gained its independence, it would have poked fun at the independence and what was going on in the country, right? What we call Pekong. But it was highlighting very important issues in a very light manner so that people would sit up and really understand what was going on within society. So the music provides a social and political commentary of events. That is what calypso does. It provides commentary, social as well as political, about the events that are happening within Trinidad and in the other parts of the world that it is actually sung. Calypso is not just confined to Trinidad and Tobago, but it is something that you would see both throughout the Caribbean and even in other parts of the world are also singing as well. So apart from entertaining, calypsonians like the Mighty Sparrow act as voices for their people, expressing their views and protesting government actions. So it's a way of exercising your freedom of speech, but in a jovial sort of manner, in a very light manner as well, because you cannot always approach very serious issues in a very serious manner. Now, calypso has a connection to carnival, and calypso competitions have been held at carnival celebrations since as early as after emancipation within the 1830s. And we would see that people would have used calypso singing that art form as a way of talking about the ills of society.